Hello, and welcome from the Office of Career and Professional Development. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. This session is going to focus on landing and launching an effective job search plan. So whether you're searching for that internship, a full-time or part-time opportunity, this presentation will give you the ins and outs and kind of critical factors to consider for an effective plan. So within the session itself, we're going to be focusing on three things. So first, starting out specifically with your why and kind of understanding what factors, what perspectives, and what insights will actually be shaping your experience. Second, we're going to spend some time fleshing out your why. So it's one thing to kind of understand theoretically what you're kind of doing and why you're doing it, but how do we make it personal? How do we get it into words that make sense? And how do you communicate that to others? And then finally, we're going to talk about implementing a plan. So specifically, how do you operationalize this idea that you've had, these influences, these factors that make the most sense, and hopefully begin the process to becoming a successful job candidate. So first things first, let's talk a little bit about understanding yourself within your search, and specifically starting with your why. So when it comes to starting your job search correctly, there's a couple of things that you really have to center. First and foremost, job searching will require a high level of individual comfort and awareness. So whenever you start job searching, no one can better tell your story than you can. So understanding those unique insights, perspective, and experiences that you bring to the table is going to be really critically important. And more importantly, you have to believe that you can do this successfully. And that positivity and that energy will kind of drive and lead your process for engagement. Second, taking the time to understand that job searching is an active process. And so when we think about job searching, whether that's locally within your local community, throughout the state of Connecticut, the New England region, or across the country, there are a variety of factors and so many individuals who are job searching that you can't be just singularly static. You have to engage the process, you have to monitor your processes, and more importantly, take ownership that ensure that the processes and steps that you are taking are going to be effective. And three, know that it's not normally always about who is the most qualified. And so while you can bring a variety of education and experiences to the table, it's really important to center that collectively the knowledge, skills, abilities, competencies, and who you are as a person will ultimately influence the decision on whether or not you're the right candidate for an organization. And keeping in mind that for the positions that you're interviewing are already within long-standing operating organizations. And so these individuals have teams, they have systems, they have structures to really kind of consider about what can be most successful and what ultimately will be shaped in what search for in a position. And so taking the time to really take stock in yourself through three specific ways are going to be important. So understanding your values, understanding your interests, and understanding your skills is a great way to kind of start this conversation. So briefly, a value is something that is desirable or important to you. So for some individuals, this idea of family and being close to family is a really important value that they want to center within their job search. So this idea of location and proximity really influences the type of positions, the type of organizations that they may explore. On the converse, for some individuals, the salary and money in which can be obtained through a position may be a more important value for you. So really taking in stock and saying, what are the top 3 to 5 values that really influence the way that you're driving your decision making are going to be really critical to your job searching process. Second, taking some time to understand your interests. And so what are the activities or things you as a person just do for fun or enjoyment? So do you really like being in community with people? Do you really like problem solving and critical thinking? Do you like puzzles and kind of just understanding facets that may be a long-term investment? So just quickly understanding, how do your interests show up in the workplace? And so do you feel okay if you had to be individually alone for 6 to 8 hours a workday? Or do you need a moderate mix of interaction with people within your organization or just with customers or clients? So just kind of understanding your individual interests are going to be really critical. And then third, the skills. And so what behaviors you've learned, acquired, and developed. And so really taking stock in your industry perspective and kind of making sense of what actual skills you need to be successful in the workforce is going to be really important. And then really being able to really articulate the ways in which you've applied those skills and can confirm that not only do you have competency in those skills, but you have application and can really communicate the value and worth of the skills that you bring to the table. And so one of the things that's really important about understanding your values, interests, and skills is a couple of pieces. And so you really want to take time to understand what are personal values that you hold, but also what are professional values, and recognizing that sometimes they may overlap, but they're usually two very different things. So for example, an individual who identifies as a woman in the workplace may have a professional value of an organization being committed to diversity and inclusion. So they want the place that they work at to really kind of center a variety of race, gender, sexual orientation, kind of ability level and status, and really being able to say that we're all collectively together and positive in terms of our engagement and our collaboration. But in terms of a personal value, that individual may feel that she may not want to be the only woman in that individualized workplace. And so while those two values may be related, they're not necessarily the same. And so taking stock in terms of your value set and what you personally need to be successful, but then professionally be successful. Some may be related, but some may be on opposite ends of the spectrum. And so just taking the time to kind of articulate that and understand that's going to be really important. And then thinking really collectively about these three ideas. So when you think about your values, your interests, and your skill sets, how do they intersect with one another? And so at this point in your life, do you feel like it's really important that you really want to apply and hone in on the skill set that you've really taken stock in during this current process or time period in your life? Or do you have specific value sets that really have to be emphasized through an organization? And necessarily the work that is day to day doesn't matter as much, but the values in terms of operationalizing it and being committed to a set of perspectives is really important to you. And naming that explicitly. And so really being clear in your intention that you can have values, you can have interests, and you can have skill sets, but some may dictate the decision-making process more than others, and just being okay with that. And so what we also want to make sure that we spend some time talking about is honoring your truth. And so every individual has a group of what we call social identities. So these are things such as race, gender, sexual orientation, ability level, religious affiliation, and being mindful that when we talk about a job searching process, these identities show up in a variety of factors for us. And so it's really important for you to take time to ask yourself, are there social identities that are really important to you that may interact or intersect with the kind of work that you're doing? And so if you have a religious affiliation that may impact the way that weekend work may engage with you, I think it's really important to take some reflective points to understand, how do you meaning make that for yourself? And what does that mean for your career trajectory? And then just kind of really being clear about your social identities within the context of your chosen industry. And so for some professions and organizations, you may be entering an environment where there may not be a high number of individuals of color or individuals who are members of the LGBTQ plus community. And so understanding for yourself, how do you navigate those environments, and how do you feel comfortable in that if that's something that's really important to your job search at this moment? And ultimately, when you start with your why, it's really important to center this idea of honesty and transparency. And so if you're not honest and transparent with yourself, you're really going to be setting yourself up for failure. When we want to think about positive and successful job searches, being clear about what is on the table, but also what's not, really helps shape you to be successful in articulating these ideas to organizations who are hiring, and more importantly, how you shape and engage the search and interview process. So honesty and transparency are also critical for success when you're using your networks. And so when you involve others in your job search process, having clarity and being able to effectively articulate these things will reap dividends in the long term. So now that we've talked a little bit about framing why you have to understand your individual why, let's talk a little bit about contextualizing your non-negotiable items. And so when we talk about non-negotiables, we mean what are the important or essential things that have to be centered or featured in this experience for you. So first, let's talk about location, location, and location. And so for every individual, this idea of where do you want to work looks very different. And so the way that we can have a conversation is very contextualized in how you show up and what's important for you right now. So for some individuals, it really means that they would really be willing to work anywhere. And so whether that's a small or a large city, whether that's a more rural or more metroplex, whether that's more urban industrial or more rural complexes, being able to truly be open to an opportunity that fits where they need to be. For some individuals, they may be doing an international job search. So they may be specifically searching outside of North America. And so they may be centering countries in Europe or Asia or South America, and really being mindful about those industry hiring practices and standards. For some individuals, they're doing a job search that really spans across a national context within the United States. So while Southern Connecticut State University may be in Connecticut, they may be doing a job search in Florida and California and Washington and anywhere and everywhere in between. And so naming that could be really important. For some individuals, they may be centering a very regional based perspective in terms of the job search. So for you, it may be more advantageous to say specifically, I really want to stay in the Northeast. And so when we think about from New York through Massachusetts and up to Maine and that center piece, that's really important for you and where you feel comfortable, confident, and that you could be successful. Or you may find another region of the United States, so the Southeast or the Pacific West. For some individuals, their job search is really specifically defined by the context of states. And so for individuals who may be searching, they may only want to search in the tri-state area. So thinking about New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, and really being in this tri-state corridor for success and being able to explicitly name that. And then for some individuals, they're doing job searches based on individual cities themselves. So we do have individuals within the state of Connecticut that really center, I really want to work in New Haven or Bridgeport or Danbury or Stamford because this makes the most sense for me in my context right now. Regardless of which example makes the most sense for you, you do have to be clear in which level. So is it going to be specific and narrow? Is it broad in terms of the regional per state perspective? Or is it truly a nationwide or international search? Being mindful and being open to that is going to be critical in terms of understanding A, what opportunities are available to you, but B, how are you truly using that, understanding that search process within those specific areas? Talking a little bit about contextualizing your non-negotiables is understanding your salary pieces. So first and foremost, it's going to be critical for you to understand the importance of research. So whether you're an entry-level professional, if you're switching careers, or if you are engaging in terms of a leadership development program or a rotational program, really kind of understanding what do funding opportunities look like. Is it the long-term trajectory? Is there a progressive compensation plan? And knowing the ins and outs of your specific industry are going to be really critical. And so individuals who may pick a profession with an education may have very different salary ranges and actual salaries itself from individuals in professions such as engineering or chemistry. And so just kind of understanding what is realistic for your industry and your perspective, and then specifically the roles for which the organizations you're kind of searching for in particular. Second, we really emphasize individuals really kind of understanding three types of understandings when it comes to their salary. So first, what is the minimum salary you feel you need to be comfortable, to kind of understand that this pays the necessities in terms of your bills and operating expenses, and really defines your quote unquote normal. And so kind of really understanding this idea and this capacity that without this number, I'm not effectively able to live, pay rent, pay the bills. If you have student loans, paying student loans, kind of just being able to just generally feel that you can live and operate. That second salary is the realistic. So how can you meet all of the things that you've kind of identified within the minimum salary expectation and maybe have enough money to be able to either save for a specific interest or maybe take a vacation every year or two. Being able to just kind of understand that you have what we call discretionary income to really impact the way in which you can shape and navigate your experience. And then third, what is your realistic dream salary? And so thinking through the ways in which you can have all the things within the minimum and realistic salary criteria and being able to add a little bit beyond that. And so if you had this, you would be able to do all of the minimum pieces, have a robust savings, kind of have a variety of discretionary incomes in a way that makes sense for you. When you think about this piece, it allows you to be able to think realistically, but have capacity to understand how to engage that conversation around salary in a more meaningful and comprehensive way. Third, really taking the time to ask your question, are there extra costs that you aren't seeing and thinking about? And so particularly great, you may have this awesome base salary, but do you have continuing education or professional development credits that you have to have to really contribute to a license or a professional certificate? Are you thinking about taking a job that's within a different part of the state or country that you are and you have to move? So really being able to factor in these pieces to really help you understand long-term, what does that look like? And then when you have this idea of salary, we always recommend that you talk in ranges and not specific dollar amounts. And so being able to not limit yourself to a specific point allows you to have more freedom and flexibility to engage this idea of conversation around salary. We would recommend generally that you talk in ranges of starting at your minimum expectation through your dream kind of salary, and watching and specifically observing how organizations really navigate that range that you've set for yourself. And so when you kind of think about salary, you also want to think about job function itself. And so really being able to be mindful that, for example, within this industry, job titles can vary specifically. And so on the screen, we use an example that we have here in the university called student affairs. And so for this example, knowing your job family, knowing your work setting, and knowing the occupational title that could look around these pieces are going to be really important. So for this individual, they've identified that they wanted to go into a career in fundraising. So specifically thinking about how you're raising dollars to either meet strategic needs for capacities of different parties within an institution. But they've also identified that they want to do fundraising specifically in the context of working within a college or university. And so the titles of the positions that they may be kind of specifically searching for may be titled development officer, a business development 2, an alumni specialist 4. And so what's going to be really important for you as you start to do your job search is asking yourself, first, what is a job family that you realistically see yourself? So yes, you may have an overarching area or overarching degree that you are kind of seeking, but specifically when you narrow down that broad scope, what is the family? And then combining that with the specific setting. So is it a nonprofit? Is it a for-profit? Is it corporate? Kind of really thinking of a variety of experiences that make sense. And then when you combine the work setting with the job family, what are the specific titles that are found in those kind of additional spaces? And so taking the time to really understand that not every organization may call the same position the same thing, but it still is providing the same functionality and type of work that makes the most sense. And then thinking strategically about other non-negotiable items that may impact your actual job search process. And so specifically naming for you, what is a starting date in terms of positions that make the most sense, thinking through a variety of opportunities and what it means for you to transition. If you are closing out an experience, say you are graduating from Southern and you need to transition to New York City after graduation, what does that look like? For instance, some individuals, they may already be employed full-time and need to close out one full-time experience to transition to the next full-time experience. Really thinking about a variety of options. So do you have this availability to telecommute or work from home, providing flexibility and freedom if that's something that you need. Thinking about retirement. And so does the organization offer a pension, a 401k, thinking of ways in which you can kind of strategically save up and contribute in a way that makes sense. But then also recognizing that non-negotiables may be very contextualized to the individual. So some individuals may need specifically thinking about partner insurance for their spouse or partner, or they may even have children specifically that they know they need insured. Thinking about particularly if there are additional personal benefits that are really important for you. So for example, for some individuals who identify as transgender or gender nonconforming, really having a non-discrimination or termination policy that is inclusive for those populations are going to be really important. So really taking the time to understand that while location, salary, and job title are of course important to all individuals, what are those unique non-negotiables that really are centered individually around you? And now that we've highlighted and contextualized some of your individual why, getting to this idea of implementing a plan. So really putting your thoughts into ideas. So when we talk about putting it all together, your internal why should be driving your processes in your job search. So when you've defined your location, the salary expectations, the job titles that make the most sense, that's how you kind of start creatively being able to sift through, this is a right position for me versus this isn't a right position for me. And being able to effectively articulate that within your employment documents, and people that you're networking and connecting with are going to be critical. You should engage this process and continually clarify and examine your definitions, as the search process is fluid and dynamic. And so what you may learn is that you may enter a job search with one very narrow idea of what you thought you wanted to do. But what you may find is that based on opportunities that are currently available, you may have a skill set to do another type of position, and then that opportunity may excite you. Don't limit yourself to opportunities and potential, and taking the time to really contextualize those are going to be really important. And then ultimately, your internal why should become second nature in the process. And so for a lot of individuals, they may second guess or create self-doubt. Is this the right organization, or is this the right type of position to pursue? When you've clearly and effectively identified your why, you should be able to assess it, to be able to ask, is the salary range right? Is this position doing the skills that I really want in a job? Is this the title that I really wanted to engage in strategically? And so using the internal why and the factors that we've previously covered to allow you to say, I need to pursue this because, or this is not an opportunity for me because, becomes more confident. And so when we talk about the basic operational component, so after you've defined your why, typically what I usually say is that job searching is 50% reflective and then 50% action. And so taking the time to really ensure that you have strong and reflective employment documents. So really taking the time to understand the power of your resume and how it does align to industry standards, and communicating your relevant skills, educational attainment, and variety of things that are relevant to your employers and organizations. Really taking the time to understand the power of the cover letter and your references. So giving insight specifically to your why you've decided to apply to this organization. And then having individuals from a variety of perspectives who can speak to the depth and breadth of your experiences, and really being able to verify the things that you've shared in your resume and cover letter, and hopefully in your interview, makes the most sense. Thinking about employment listings and where you can find opportunities. So a lot of recruiting has transitioned at this point to LinkedIn. And so how are we connecting and virtually showcasing jobs and opportunities in a way that makes most sense? And so how are we leveraging networks? How are we connecting? How are we understanding what makes the most sense? Here in the Office of Career and Professional Development, we have a career platform that's called Jobs, in which we receive anywhere from 25 to 250 job postings a week from a variety of organizations in the state of Connecticut, through the Northeast, and across the United States, and sometimes the world. And so making sure that you're consistently, actively engaged within the platform, seeing what's new and what's auto-populated, and what makes the most sense in terms of your search qualifications. Within Jobs, you can actually set what's called a job agent, and it can send you a weekly email of new positions that have posted to the system, and more importantly, fit the qualifications and standards you're searching for. And then just thinking about general career posting websites that you have access to. And so one of the ones that I've listed here on this slide here is cthires.com. And so this is the state of Connecticut portal to really show what full-time opportunities are available. So really taking the time to identify where are your career posting websites, what are the opportunities and avenues that you're searching for employment, and how are you using a diverse array of opportunity listings to make sure that you achieve your intended outcome. And then finally, thinking about leveraging your connections and ultimately engaging in networking experiences. And so if you have the opportunity to really network and engage with people in person, taking the time to really ask those critical questions of getting insight to your industry and organization, but also recognizing that digital networking can be just as effective. So setting up what we call informational interviews to take 15 or 30 minutes just to understand the person and organization, maybe some skill or insight and perspective that they can provide is going to be really important. And then kind of leveraging in websites like LinkedIn to be more effective and more creative in what you're looking to go for in terms of the future. So collectively, what we really wanted to emphasize here in terms of launching your job search is that we wanted to make sure it's 360. So it has to center you, it has to center your goals, it has to center your long-term career trajectory. And hopefully that this presentation gave you some points to reflect on, some critical insights and questions that maybe you can ask yourself. If you have any questions, please don't feel free to reach out to us. You can connect with us at careers.southernct.edu. Take care and have a good rest of your day.